Our next presenter is Amanda Vincent from the Institute of the Oceans and Fisheries from the University of British Columbia. Amanda is a driving force for ocean conservation anchored in her specialty of seahorses. She was the first biologist to study the extraordinary animals underwater. Her Project Seahorse team finds solutions for coastal marine ecosystems, linking research and management to create areas, fisheries regulations, and global wildlife trade policy. Amanda was the first ocean person to win the world's top award in animal conservation, the Indianapolis Prize.
This wonderful fellowship confirms our success in reconciling knowledge generation and knowledge application in a tight feedback loop. We've managed to make many breakthroughs in marine conservation and now have our scientific contributions affirmed as well. As a professor at the Institute for the Oceans and Fisheries at UBC, I lead a multidisciplinary marine conservation team called Project Seahorse. I also chair the Marine Conservation Committee and the Global Expert Group on Signathid Fishes for the IUCN, a union which unites 1,400 member organizations around the world. Project Seahorse regards the world as a bit of an onion, one that involves us in a great range of conservation action. To support seahorses and pipefishes, we have to address the many layers of pressure that bear down on these 300 or so species of quirky fishes, found in fresh, brackish, and marine waters globally. To support the fishes, we need to ensure their habitats and communities are in good shape. That requires working with people who place pressures on the ocean, fishing, shipping, coastal development, and more. They in turn respond to their families' well-being, which depends on social stability, economic opportunity, and good governance. In today's world, the fate of the seahorses is closely tied to many geopolitical layers, from municipality and region to nation and globe. We're very engaged with the UN's multilateral environmental agreements. Ultimately, the fate of seahorses depends on human behaviors, of course, of self-indulgence or self-discipline. Seahorses are ideal iconic species to drive marine conservation, easily grabbing attention. For one thing, only the male gets pregnant. The female deposits eggs in the male's brood pouch where they are fertilized. He then provides oxygen and nutrition for weeks, until he goes into labor for hours, releasing independent young. My work started in reproductive ecology, trying to understand the evolution of sex differences. After all, if males get pregnant, how does that influence competition for mates? The realization that I was the first biologist to study these animals underwater soon imbued me with a huge commitment to the seahorses. It was therefore a shock to discover that seahorse populations were under enormous pressure. My field research revealed that they were targeted in small-scale fisheries, while establishing that the primary threat by far is non-selective fisheries, especially bottom trawls. They also suffer from degradation of their diverse coastal habitats. I spent many years investigating the biology, threats, and population status of seahorses. This work generated some of the first ever conservation assessments for marine fish species. At the time, there were huge objections to even allowing the possibility that marine fishes could be vulnerable to extinction. Having realized the fishing pressure on seahorses, it was vital to take action. We worked with subsistence fishing communities in the Philippines to prompt creation of 35 no-take marine protected areas. All were catalyzed by our joint teams of Filipino social workers and biologists, which may explain why they are still flourishing today. The marine reserves were established on an ad hoc basis wherever villagers wanted them and would enforce them. Even so, marine life responded wonderfully and recovered encouragingly. And when we later deployed systematic planning tools like Marksan, we found that villager enthusiasm had resulted in good ecological coverage. We soon realized that even successful marine reserves were no match for the level of seahorse exploitation globally. Our surveys in ports and warehouses revealed an annual and unsustainable trade of tens of millions of dried seahorses and hundreds of thousands of live seahorses among about 80 countries. So we began working with CITES, which is a UN convention with 182 countries that regulates exports of wildlife for sustainability. At that time, though, CITES systematically refused to engage with marine fishes on the premise that such economic commodities were best left to the fisheries agencies. It was therefore a huge breakthrough when we engineered the first ever global export regulations for any marine fish with the seahorses. Wonderfully, breaking that taboo has led to successful efforts to regulate exports in sharks, humphead wrasse, and many other marine species. As ever, our conservation action is driven by research. We respond to our conservation wins with more research. Much of our CITES-related work has been focused on ensuring that trade regulations are fully implemented, often by providing pragmatic tools in taxonomy, management, and policy, all setting precedent for other marine fishes. Over time, we've realized that the global trade in seahorses, as in so many other species, is driven by bottom trawling. These indiscriminate gears scrape the bottom, catching everything in their path and laying waste to important habitats. Bottom trawlers catch thousands of species willy-nilly, including many millions of seahorses. Bottom trawling is now becoming annihilation fishing. Many such fisheries no longer even have target species. They go to sea to catch any and all marine species, then end up selling most of the catch to feed chickens or other animals, earning mere pennies per kilogram. In such scenarios, the only endpoint will be the elimination of marine life. In addition to its ecological damage, bottom trawling raises serious concerns about economic and human rights. Bottom trawling commonly loses money and survives only by bad government subsidies, encouraging ongoing damage. Owners also reduce costs by relying on enslaved or indentured labor. Our team is now determined to help end bottom trawling. We are doing research across Asia on the conservation damage, socioeconomic concerns, and policy framework behind these fisheries. And we are creating the partnerships and communication materials to help engage the public and policymakers in ending this outrage. Our broad-reaching work received a boost this month when the 1,400 member organizations of the IUCN voted to adopt resolutions I initiated for action on bycatch and fisheries, and joyously also on seahorses, where all this work started, which are still my inspiration and my passion.